this wonderful family who have been married for almost 5 decades. And now we are going to tell you how it all began.
Previously, we shared the incredible love story of
Honorable Monica and the husband, Mr. and Mrs. Mutsvangwa. We are in their residence and we are just going to have a conversation.
two souls who found each other during the tumultuous days of Zimbabwe's liberation war. Their journey of resilience, hope, and unwavering commitment inspired us all. If you missed the first part, make sure to watch it to fully appreciate the extraordinary journey. Head over to the description box and click on the first link to catch up, and then join us back here for the continuation of the inspiring story. Now, let's dive back in and discover more about the enduring love and powerful legacy of
Honorable Monica and the husband, Mr. and Mrs. Mutsvangwa. We are in their residence and we are just going to have a conversation.
Kindly support our cause by hitting the subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and share this video. Don't forget to like it to help us reach more people and make a bigger impact on the next generation. Africa needs you.
Let me welcome you to Channel 63.
Yeah,
That is what I was coming to.
Deliberate push
Because
for these people to write, even if some of them had not gone to school and were not able to
but they were
read,
smart.
but they could sit there and tell the story.
An oral story.
An oral
and then
story.
people can write it.
And these stories were,
because-
they will go without our children ever knowing.
And Honorable, this is so important, Mr. Mutsvangwa. Look, all across Africa, a lot of our historical books are written by the white,
Yeah.
with white lenses, who have no clue what you went through. And even if they know what you went through, they'll twist it.
They always.
Just so that they will take something
So-
away from the younger generation. So now that we are aware, the question I'm putting to the two of you, who started all the way from the bush, have succeeded up to this point. And fortunately enough, you have been in government, she's now still in government. How are we going to address this issue?
Well, the first thing we are doing right now, just the last cabinet, we approved the heritage-based education system, which we call 5.0. This is to try and instill the values of who we are and understand the history of our country. And we will be starting that from the age of 3 years at what we call ECD.
Which means the educational curriculum is going to be revamped.
We are completely going to revamp the education curriculum. We are also going to make the children who will be born in this country love who they are, love their Africa, love their African neighbors, rather than looking always up to the West. Because most of the content which our young generation today have in front of them is all foreign.
Absolutely.
Coming mostly from the Western countries.
Absolutely.
I mean, imagine Facebook, WhatsApp, what our children are learning from this Twitter. And we are saying it's important that we digitalize all what was in analog form, formula, so that at least our young people can read. But anyway, the war was a difficult time.
I know. I mean, obviously.
And I must tell you one thing, the experiences were so traumatic.
Yes.
And believe you me, this is the truth, and I went through it. My mom, who lived with me, she was alive up to, she died in 2001. And I came back from America as a diplomat in 1990.
10 years.
So 10 years, I had an opportunity to live with my mom. She always used to say, so you mean, my dear daughter, you are not going to tell me what happened in the 5 years when you were not when you were in the bush? And I always used to say, Mom, I will tell you. But the truth of the matter is, each time you try to say the story, tears will just run down and emotions will hold you so much that you can't even continue. It was too traumatic.
But you see, if we don't do something about it, Mr. Mutsvangwa, the pain that would emerge through the destruction of the very heritage that you have built will be worse off.
Yeah.
That is what is happening now.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And it's not only in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
I mean, Zimbabwe, I think, like I said, when I came here, which is just about 4 days ago, I am so, I mean, I am so impressed with what I'm seeing. But you see, now you have a continent where young people are not even proud of their own dialect.
That's it.
Yeah, this is the challenge.
So the question is, sir, what can we do as a continent to ensure that the African values, the Zimbabwean values, I mean, here you guys are fortunate. You eat your own food. You know, it's so beautiful. But how intentional are we going to be about this to ensure that we don't lose the heritage, the values?
You see, I think the first thing to pause is, why would a young man leave the comfort of a mother or the prospect of school to go to war?
Yes.
The only reason why you would do that is you are saying that we are deprived of the opportunities.
Right.
And that means we are being left behind by other countries because we are being deprived of opportunities in our own country. And this is the enemy. I must defeat that enemy.
Sure.
Even if I die, it does not matter,
Right.
because I've created an opportunity for future, for others, for those who survive. So this is the spirit of that which she talked about,
Yes.
that Samora Machel Soweto generation,
Yes.
sacrificing for opportunity.
Right.
And what does opportunity translate to? It means delivery of prosperity. So the only way to pay homage to these young people of that particular generation is not only to write about it, but to deliver a modern country which then says, my sacrifice was worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
but
understand?
see,
So the challenge
if you
which...
don't mind, if you
Yeah,
don't
no, let me tread.
sure.
The challenge which we had with our first president was the country got lost in terms of trying to deliver that prosperity.
Yeah.
Then in the end, somebody even wanted to create a monarchy out of the same country which everybody had sacrificed for. So you create a certain sense of hopelessness because there's economic stagnation
Absolutely.
and economic regression. What the new president has done is to put the agenda of prosperity back
back to the table.
to the table. Because I told you, to write, to think, requires the luxury
Absolutely.
of time. So we need that prosperity.
When you're
restored.
hungry, you can't think.
You can't think. So this is why the president, we are so happy now with the Second Republic, that what he has done is to take the resources of Zimbabwe, which are world class, which attracted those countries, and start applying those world class resources to the best possible capital in the world today.
Sure.
So the companies and investors in Zimbabwe today are world class. We are going to be producing goods made in Zimbabwe which are world class for the global market.
Absolutely.
We are looking at the prospect where you can now go abroad and see made in Zimbabwe products in supermarkets and department stores in other countries.
Absolutely.
So out of that, you create a sense of pride because you are producing goods, world-class goods, which represent you as a country in other countries. So we need to create prosperity in order then to be able to afford the digging of our history. Because remember, we may have many people dying,
Right.
but there is a very important book which you started off with today. It's called the Bible.
Sure.
You were praying.
Yeah.
It was written 30, 40 years after Jesus was dead.
Yes.
But it is still commanding the people today, even when it was. So we're only 40 years since the war ended. If we create the material conditions, we will teach young people to go and ask their fathers and their grandparents
How it's
and their
all-
fathers, how did you fight the war? Because the stories are there. So young people will be doing research and they will be putting it, and then we'll put it in digital format. Because that's how the history comes back. Remember, the war was fought by the people. It was not fought in Mozambique. It was fought among the villagers in Zimbabwe. So the whole history about this war you are talking about, it's there in the village. Somebody needs to go and take it out. So we need to have the material conditions which creating prosperity. Then out of it, we also create we can afford to have the technology and the research which goes to do what you are talking about. So this is the way I would
I'm
answer.
comfortable.
And as a minister of war, I was a minister of the war veterans.
Right.
That's how I was going to approach this thing. And I still hope that even when I'm still chairman of the association, we can do that. And then we know. But the first thing is to create hope. And I want to add one aspect, about why I said the learning curve about warfare was very steep. I had a British teacher, a principal in secondary school. He's asked by the BBC in 1975, why are all the children leaving school to go to Mozambique? Because he's British, he cannot say you are oppressing them. That's why they are leaving. Because it would have offended the British government and the whites, the audience. So being very smart, his name was Father Prosser. He was with the community of the Resurrection of the Anglican. He says, I don't know why the children are leaving to go to war. But what I can tell you is that the best and the brightest are the ones who are going to war. So you can see that the people who went to fight the war were the ones who were most visionary and smart.
Right.
So that's why even our army today, where we remained intact, it's one of the best on the African continent. Structure, there are more degrees per square kilometer in our army than on the whole of African continent. They just came back from the war and went back to school. So if we create prosperity, we create the material conditions to make it possible
For the right thing to be done.
to be done. That's why the president is right now to say.
But the writing has got to be done. I think we need to really take a deliberate move. I personally, even as a minister in charge of women affairs, I am actually planning with funds available, maybe with the help of development partners, to bring all the female war veterans just under one roof and allow the young generation to just sit around them and ask questions and try to close that intergenerational gap.
Yeah.
It has to be done because the longer we wait, the more we lose.
And the danger
This
is
history.
that you might lose a lot of these people.
Yes,
I
we'll
can give
lose.
you a very practical
This is it.
example. In Ghana, there were two gentlemen that were working encyclopedias of, if you like, call it the independent history of Ghana. And I kept persisting and pressuring them, look, let's do a book. Let's do a book. One of them went for a cabinet retreat. And as they were walking out, he just dropped down. He just
The library is gone.
You get a point. And that's what we are talking about. And that's very, very good. But again, let's come back to one of the key things that, and this is for the purpose of the younger generation, son and mom. How have you guys managed to maintain such a wonderful family coming from the war and for all these more than 4 decades? I mean, a lot of times, things are different. And not only that, maintain a disciplined family, 4 strong boys. How have you managed?
Well, Doctor, let me first of all say there is one thing which the war instilled in us.
Tell us about it.
Is discipline and tolerance and to give each other room to think what you are not considering important. So that's really the threshold of tolerance is actually wide. Like anybody else, like in any family, there may be disagreements and you may not like what the other is doing. But again, because of that threshold of tolerance, which is quite wide, that keeps you going. But most of as for us, I met him under very difficult circumstances. We were young. I was young. He was a little older than me. We got a difference of about 5 years. And there was nothing which you would think a young girl would look up to today. I always laugh because I hear the young girls, even in the villages, when they're looking for a boyfriend, they're looking for a boyfriend with 3 C's. And I ask, what is 3 C's exactly? They say cash, cell phone, and car.
Oh my goodness. Cash, cell phone, and car. The 3 C's. Interesting.
And for me, there was nothing of that sort. He had nothing, I had absolutely nothing. I don't even want to tell you that maybe he didn't even have underwear. He didn't, not because he didn't want to, but we couldn't afford it in the war.
Yeah.
It was not there.
It was not there.
Yeah.
I remember wearing a bra when I was already breastfeeding. I never had an opportunity of getting a bra. So I'm just talking about that love, the genuine love. And we started off as friends. And then eventually it grew to that intimate relationship. And there's always been respect for each other. And we all understand that in our own individuality, we have got certain talents, which when we put them together, we build a wonderful relationship. So we've been blessed, you are very correct, with 4 wonderful children, wonderful boys, who I am so grateful to the Lord for, because we both didn't have as much time
That's what I was coming to.
as you would like to have. But there's one thing I always did was to have quality time with my children.
Which is missing today.
Yes. It could be short, but very quality time. Talk deep.
I mean,
Understand.
I came and saw your son.
You
I
saw
brought you
that.
lunch,
You
and they
saw,
were
you
at the
saw the
table,
conversation. Yes.
And I was feeling guilty
Yes.
for interrupting the conversation. But
Exactly. That is the relationship I've created with my boys. Each one has got different ways of looking at things, different things, think differently from the other. So if you talk to them whilst they're in a group, you will not be able to know your children. So I always try to find time to talk to an individual as an individual. And that way I can understand and sit back and say, yes, I know my children. We have also been working very, very hard to be where we are today.
absolutely.
We are not beneficiaries of anything. Nothing in this home belongs to the government, neither does it belong to the party. It's what we have worked with our hands. We have also experienced problems, which happens in politics. But what we have always, how we have managed to overcome those problems is because we hold each other's hand and say, if we go down together. If we go up together. My success
Where did
is
you
his
pick-
success.
Where did you pick those values from? Is it from your parents?
Partly from my, it was for me from my mother.
What
She
about
was
you?
strong.
Well, so it's family. I grew up in family, and I was very much interested in the historical background of my family, where we came from, and the challenges which we faced were as a transition family from being traditional to modern, and some of the achievements of my grandfather in particular, who was one of the pioneer business people of this country when the whites came. And then, of course, he was deprived as the whites' numbers increased. They marginalized the black, particularly after the Second World War, and he slid into poverty and was denied possible. So you get this sense of hard work from the family, where you come from. But then also the war itself. Remember, there is intense energy and movement of people. You meet here. The truck comes, she's deployed to the other front. You never meet her again. And another set of people will come. But you have to strike relationships immediately. Because those are the relationships which make you go to the front. You are at the front, drops dead. She has been shot. After 7 years, been shot. After 7, maybe two remain alive. You've got to somehow adjust to the new situation without being held back by what has happened. Because if you hang on to the past, you cannot confront the what's coming up. You have to fight. And you are told that if you don't fight, your sacrifice has been in vain. So you say, okay, comrade, you are gone. I've got to carry the struggle forward. So it has created those values in which we appreciate. But remember, she's smart, I'm smart. We also came back and spent a lot of time to school. I was already at university studying law. I came back, even as we were supporting the two families, I had to do telecommunications. So I started the whole industry of telecommunications in Zimbabwe. The internet, she's the one who negotiated the first internet switch for Africa. Because she's a product of the MBA from America. This is after the war, supporting the children, going to work and going to school.
At the same time?
At the same time.
And supporting a big man like you as well.
And supporting a big woman like you. So you see,
it has not been easy.
It has not been easy. And
so my question for the two of you.
And then the politics, of course. We have to constantly, we're now being called back because the more, because we can read the situation internally and externally and analyze the challenges.
And have a big strategic decision.
It's the decisions. So we, like when we were under pressure from the Western countries, I was just told, stop your business, you're going to China to become ambassador.
Just like that.
Just like that. Because we're making money now, we are now comfortable. And they said, no, the revolution is under threat. We need new sorts of capital. The Chinese have become rich. I'm very thankful to those comrades who had made a friendship of China when it was poor. Now it came to our rescue. So we had to go back to China now with the heavy burden of looking for capital and technology to offset the sanctions and the grip of the West. So it gave us another dimension about what can be achieved. When you see a third world country rise from Norway to become the second largest economy in the world, you get inspiration. And we had been to Europe. I spent years in Europe, in Belgium. I've seen it all. I go to America, I've seen wonders. And I said, maybe that's how it has always been. In China, we went there. I saw people bootstrapping themselves from nothing. And it is work at end. So you get that inspiration. So these are the things which make me and Monica, we have a whole bank, we have a whole reservoir of what to call upon. So many lives to call upon to try to make us deal with the day-to-day challenges.
Yesterday, go ahead.
But for most families, the marriage institution needs to be taken very seriously. My mother used to teach me that when you get into a marriage, you can't just easily say, oh, it's not like a shoe which is pinching you and you say, no, I'll take it off. I think it's very important to get the right person who understands you better, who is more of a friend than a husband. I have gone through situations where I look at Chris not as my husband, but as my friend. He will always remain my friend. I may be angry with him for something which he may do, but I always have respect, and I think it's my responsibility to take care of his health and to take care of him, no matter what. And for that reason, I've also taught my children, as a mother, to respect their father, no matter what. Because those are the values which were instilled in me by my own mom. And I sit back happy to say the values which I instilled in my children, I don't think we are the best parents, but we've tried our best. We've worked under very difficult circumstances to send them all to school. And they have gone to schools of their own choice. And we don't dictate who they should marry or what degree they should take. And so we have an element of, I don't know what I would call it. In the war we used to call liberalism. You keep somebody tolerant. Again, that threshold of tolerance. And that has helped. I feel at this stage, I would like to spend more time with my grandchildren because I know I didn't spend so much time with my own children. And I do regret sometimes because then you have to work harder to close the gap, because bonding is very important as you are bringing up your children. I never left my children, and I never sent my children to a boarding school because I realized I needed that little time. I was, the school runs, I know them all. Whenever I could get an opportunity from work, I would rush to the schools to work in the tuck shops and do all the duties at the school, because I really wanted a community, the school community to understand that I'm a parent just like any other parent. And I have attended every graduation of my children, no matter where it's happening. And each time I try to make it a point that when the first one graduated, I would take the other 3 boys so that they emulate what their brother is doing. And the other value is to try and keep my children together, no matter what. Even if they marry, They are bringing in lovely girls into my life. And I love the daughters-in-law I have. And I want this legacy. Because the whole reason of working so hard, like he says, you go to war, you're not fighting for opportunities for yourself. There are comrades who died and they just were so happy to say, take my gun and continue fighting for independence. Not a single person died in the war and said, oh, why did I come? Dying, why did I? No. They always used to say, comrade, take my gun and continue fighting for independence, for the opportunities for the people of Zimbabwe.
I want to ask a question.
Yeah.
How have you managed? You are a minister, and a cabinet minister for that matter. Yeah. And I come to your home, you are so relaxed.
Yes.
How do you get the pressure off your shoulders? And the same to you.
It's a good question.
And I want to combine that with this. Look at him. It's very, look, all of you are looking so young. Yesterday when you mentioned you were young, wow. How have you made it?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I ask myself, how do I accomplish?
And please don't say only the grace. I want to know the practical.
Well, look, first is the grace of God.
Yes, I know.
Amen. But it's also the exposure we've gone through, the kind of problems we've gone through. There's nothing which can really traumatize me except the death of a loved one. Anything else, I've seen it.
Yeah.
No matter how tough it is, I've seen it. I know there's so much with cyberbullying, especially as a woman minister, as a woman political leader, and so much is said about you. And if you really concentrate on what the enemy is saying about you, then you are distracted. You can't achieve what you want to achieve. So I've passed that stage. Nothing can really traumatize me except the death of a loved one. Anything else I can handle.
What about you, sir?
It's the same.
I mean, when you walked in and I looked at your face, I'm like, wow.
No, you see, when you go through war, like I said, you've gone through the West. So there's nothing worse than which you can ever see afterwards. And we have been under constant pressure. You know, we are seen as the role of a good example.
Bad
Always. So,
threat of a good example.
And then by the same token, also the threat of a good example. So it means that we stand out as sore thumbs for those who would want to reverse the gains of the war. That's, you know, if you look at Google, you read about my wife. If I would come home and say, "Is this real my wife?" She's a different person. You know, people create a Monica which I don't know. I've lived with her. They manufacture here and into another thing in Ogre. And the same thing happens to me, even as we are talking right now. If you go on Google, you will see, but you develop thick skin. You develop thick skin. And you see, remember, we had this generation of young people whom we absolutely adore for their courage, their sacrifice, their determination. And they are not there. And I could as well have been them. So I take courage from the fact that I was associated with this nobility, these noble human souls which are not around. And when we talk, we can remove chaff from wheat between the two of us. So, and then
I'm sorry for taking too much of your time, but let me ask this one or two questions that we can bring it to a close. Are you worried about the institution, the African marriage institution, the way it's going now?
Of course I'm worried.
Divorce and all.
I'm worried. The rate of divorce is high.
No, the marriage is no longer cohesive.
And I think a lot of other people think that when we speak about women empowerment, the results are not very pleasing, especially when you look at the number of divorces. But I really don't think so, because I think a beautiful marriage can actually happen between two talented, gifted people who are coming together not because of dependence, but who are coming together because they love each other and they love to stay together. And I think this is what I was talking about, that there is nothing, when I succeed, it's his success. When he succeeds, it's my success. And this is how we look at it. And I feel sorry that a lot of our young generation maybe expecting a little bit too much from each other. Not only divorces, but we're seeing serious suicides, even murders. I don't know whether it's because of abuse of substance abuse or taking of drugs, which is accelerating the numbers. But I think certainly we need to instill the importance of marriage. Because what's the point of marriage anyway? People are supposed to live together and make a family. And that way you can leave a legacy. Why we are still working today when my last born son is already working is because I want to leave a legacy. So a legacy can only be, you can only have that legacy if we reproduce, we marry, we take the marriage seriously, because all children who are brought up in a family where there is love and harmony and peace, they normally become very empowered. So that is important, that we continue to teach our women and
maintain
men.
the family unit.
Yeah.
The family unit is the basic building block of society. So whichever way, regardless of the advances, we have to master technology in such a way that it supports the family. Because if we lose the family, then the whole society disintegrates.
But Africans are gradually losing the extended family concept.
Look, this is inevitable. We are, it's the march of progress. What is the standard? What is the yardstick of modernization? It's urbanization. But maybe the extended family was much more attuned to the rural setting. When you are in an urban setting, you are constantly being moved around because of the demand of the work. You have to produce it effectively.
And also development, just to say, I'll give you a typical example of this home. I told you earlier on, I said, when I built this home, every relative out there thought this was big so that you can accommodate everybody. And I looked after a lot of children. I've sent a lot of children, my own children and my
Extended
relatives'
family.
extended family. But today, this house is empty. It's me and Chris and maybe one or two relatives who are still around. My children, because they've gone to school, they want their independence, they're in their own homes. You heard him saying, "Goodbye, Mom, I'm going to my home."
I heard him
So
saying,
that's
I'm going. The lunchtime.
and a lot of those relatives, children who we sent to school, they are well established now, and they've now taken care of their own families. So in actual fact, it can't be the same development, as he rightly says. It actually sort of how do you, because one is in China, the other one is in America, the other one is in Europe, the other one is working in Bulawayo, Mutare. So development really, I don't know. I love my family. I love my extended family. I do a lot for my extended family. Those who need my help, they know that when they come to this home, I'll do my best under the circumstances.
I guess what my brother is saying is an appeal to re-emphasize the issue of, and that's what you have started.
Dr. Day,
To me. Yeah.
Day to me.
I agree that we need to put the history down, but there's a certain aspect which I try to address.
Yeah.
If we don't deliver a modern Africa, a modern prosperous Africa in terms of material conditions, it becomes very difficult to even look at briefly, because that history will not be glamorous. If the history ends up in poverty for the country, people say, what was the sacrifice for? So what we have done for this country is actually to use the fact that we have the exposure of having been in the first world countries to learn about how Europe developed, how America developed, and how China developed. To take an inventory of what Zimbabwe is, what makes Zimbabwe be such a contentious country. It's its resource base. Then we have said that this resource base, what is missing to make Zimbabwe go to the next stage? It is capital. And it has to be world-class capital. So a lot of the things which have happened in this economy, including influencing our president to take a certain, the current president, and even our fight against the former president, because that is, she's the one who did the impeachment of the former president.
Oh.
Yeah, she was the one who did the impeachment.
Interesting.
Someone whom she had worked with in Mozambique as her boss. She says, no. Now, if you are going to take this country into poverty, that's not what we sacrifice for. So we have...
And if you're going to allow your young wife to run the country into a ditch,
to turn a country
that
into a
would not
dynasty,
allow.
this is not what we fought for. But what we have also done is to identify the most competent companies from those countries which are willing to come to Zimbabwe, to put their money into this country so that we begin to transform the economy of this country. The tobacco industry of this country had collapsed in 2002 because Africans had taken back the land and the whites refused to refinance the banks, white banks, colonial banks. They refused to refinance the same land because they said, we have title already, we can't give it. So we went to China. We found everybody smoking in China. I said, where do you get
tobacco from? It's Gaffo.
yeah. They say we grow it all, but for the best cigarettes, the best blend is from Zimbabwe. So the higher the quality, the percentage of Zimbabwe leaf in a cigarette, the higher the purchase price. So all the premium cigarettes in the world,
From here.
They are blended with
the blend,
Zimbabwe.
the 13 to 16% is from here. So we had to think out of the box with them here to convince the Chinese to come and invest in the new farmer and remodel the whole thing away from auction to contract so that there's a direct relation between the merchant and the farmer and bypass those banks. And today that industry is booming 1 billion people. We have the biggest auction floors in the world and we have 200,000 farmers registered, families registered. They are sharing 1 billion every year. That's why this economy cannot suffer. We looked at the gold industry in this country. I was the chairman of the War Veterans. The former president did not allow young people to dig gold because the mines were owned by the former colonials. But before the former colonials owned them, the mines were owned by the blacks. So why are you stopping young people from digging gold and sending the police against them? I went into the cabinet. I made sure that we changed the law, allowed young people to dig gold. Do you know what makes the Zimbabwean economy today tick? Those two crops. Gold accounts for almost 60%, 70% of the foreign currency, which this country earns. That's why 2 months ago, everybody had a $100 note, which was new, because you're selling gold to Dubai. If you change the price, of course, the gold disappears, it goes underground, it is smuggled. But if you give them the price, which is right, it's not smuggled. That's why this economy ticks. These were reforms which came from me and here. We identified the best possible company in the world to do steel, because Zimbabwe has got 200 years of iron ore deposits. In this country, we have the third largest ferrochrome deposit in the world. There's no country, and we have the best coking coal in Africa, in Zimbabwe. So in terms of the production of steel, all the elements which are needed, the resources, are within the proximity of each other. China gets them 12,000 kilometers away from Brazil, 10,000 kilometers from South Africa, 8,000 kilometers from Australia. Zimbabwe, all it within 500. We had to focus, me and Monica, and work with the current president to attract that capital. So in next month, Zimbabwe becomes the major iron steel producer on the African continent. It is going to revolutionize the whole of the continent because we will be bigger than Ukraine in the next 2 to 3, 4 years. We'll be bigger. So and already even the South African industry, which the Western was boasting about, it's fretting and creaking under the prospect of competition from Zimbabwe. I know Zimbabweans love to get permits to go to South Africa to go and work because they thought the advanced economy is there. I can bet in the next 36 months, the permits will be coming the other way. It will be the president of Zimbabwe granting permits. So the quest, which is the Africa
We will open the borders. We will not even worry much about permits. Our brothers and sisters in Africa, they should be allowed.
They should be coming here.
There should be free movement of people.
So that the Africa Free Trade Union allows the movement of goods and services, so that the young people's energy can be released. Because only that way can we fulfill the quest for prosperity, which made so many sacrifices throughout the whole sub-region.
But I just want to say that, is it possible, like you have started, for us to address this issue concurrently. And the reason being is this. You and your wife, God bless you, and Zimbabwe are blessed to have you. But like she said, every time you lose one of your veterans,
the library
is
goes.
gone.
The library
So
goes.
is it, once we are focused on the prosperity,
We need to.
can we also look at this?
I would be happy
The
to
two
write
are-
a book.
Absolutely.
I would be very happy.
On set.
I think
On set, let me
I think
give you a promise.
all what I need is a little bit of push in money and resources, and somebody who is prepared to maybe
To listen.
Honorable, you don't
To
need
ghost
money
write.
to write a book. The historical aspect of your experience, so that this young generation, and not only them,
And you are right. Let me tell you, I do agree with what he says, but I do disagree with waiting until we have prosperity.
No.
Because I don't know when I'm going to go.
nobody knows.
I'm over 60, well over 60.
You know.
And I with the amount of energy I have to exert in my work,
Maybe
you can
maybe
just.
you didn't realize what I was saying is that there are only so many hours in a day.
Yeah.
Now, if I had tried to write a book in the last 10 years,
You couldn't have accomplished the thing.
I couldn't have I couldn't have built a steel plant.
But the rich history,
So, You know, now that there's now that there is a sense of movement on the economic side, it also gives me the luxury because it cottons on to many people. People are going to join into that economy.
Yeah.
It means that I can also withdraw and have more time.
But I was going to say that actually to write a book, it does not necessarily have to mean that you have to sit and begin to write.
Yeah.
Now what we are doing now, we can just take this whole tape and transcribe.
Yeah. That's
So
No, I'll be
that's
very
so
happy.
No.
I'm personally would be very happy.
I'm
No.
making a pledge
Oh,
that
wonderful.
We're going to work
we have
on
the
this.
good.
Museum of African Liberation.
Yes.
And I started working on that with UNESCO.
Right.
These are challenges which I've been facing. So I'm trying to do, but you can only keep so many heads in this in the air. Heads in the air.
Yeah.
So but now where we are going, I think we need. I feel this, particularly after the death of my granddaughter, who used to retell them these stories. I feel that I need that story on the internet.
Absolutely.
For the other children and for posterity.
And for your great grandchildren
Yes.
to come and read it.
Yes.
And for posterity.
Yeah.
Now I can't take all your time.
Sure.
So I mean it's been an honor. So what I'm going to do right now is this is your camera. We've talked about a number of things, but before we do that, why did you try to impeach the former president?
Well, it was the whole of the people of this country who were really felt let down by our founding father, President Mugabe. I lived with them.
Right.
I told you, Mama Salim Mugabe was my mother.
Right.
Because I didn't have a mother, neither a sister
Right.
or niece or aunt. So we used to go to her and really find that comfort of her mother. And the principles and values which we fought for, the respect which we had to what the expectations from the leadership was not somewhere diluted. We all of a sudden found, influence of a very young wife who had also young people who called themselves G40s, who felt that the war had nothing to do with this country.
Because they didn't know the history.
They didn't know the history.
They wanted power.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had allowed it for a long time. The people of this country, he was the War Veterans chairman. And I remember very well the day before the people gathered on the streets of
Went into
Harare.
the streets.
The phone never stopped ringing because everyone from all political affiliations, from all ethnicity, color, creed, and they all said, have you organized this? Because we want to see it through. And the next day, the streets of Harare, you couldn't even move.
That would be another subject for discussion another time. But what I want you guys to do.
But it was also because I'm a very courageous person. I told
there's no
you.
doubt.
Because when
There's nobody with the card.
when it's supposed to
head.
volunteer. Sorry.
Remember the head.
I know. When our members were asked to volunteer, who is going to read to move the motion of impeachment, there was silence, and I raised up my hand. I said, I can do it. And on that particular day, when I was, it was a combined parliament, and when I was just about to stand up and start reading my motion, somebody came to me and said, do you realize what you are just about to do? You will end up tomorrow without your head on your neck. And I said, let it be. And I continued and I read.
I'm sure these young people have never heard of it before. But that should be a subject for another discussion. And that is why, Mr. Uncle
Just
Chris,
say Chris, Uncle Chris.
Why the codification of the history
It's important. It's
important.
absolutely
so
crucial.
that these guys will not take things for granted.
Yeah.
That, all this development that is going on and all of that came just out of
Natural.
nothing.
Yeah.
People pay the price.
But this
a
is what
conscious
the
effort.
young generation in this
Don't
country
know.
do. They actually think everything is easy. I can see it with all my own nieces when they come here and stay with me. They see me, the way I dress and the way and they think they can walk up tomorrow
Absolutely.
dressing like that.
And they
I've
are
walked a
developing-
long path.
Yeah.
A
They're
very
developing
difficult
a
path.
microwave mentality,
Yeah.
which we have to address.
And miracles.
Exactly. And unfortunately,
They
some
go to
pastors are not
churches.
helping it
They
also.
go to churches and are told you can be
Excellent. That's what I
instantly
was going to
rich.
say. This is your camera, and just from your heart, what have you got to tell not only the young people in Zimbabwe? You are talking to the youth of this country, Zimbabwe and Africa. Please bear that in mind. And any aspect you want to address, it could be the family, it could be anything. So maybe we start with you, Mami. That's your camera.
Well, for Africa to become great so that nobody will ever look down on Africa, the African countries have got to develop. The African countries should take advantage of what we have, the mineral resources, the human resources, and the youth dividend. Africa has more than 75% of young people, and 51% of those are young women. And the issue of gender equality will certainly bring harmony, an inclusive society where everybody will play a role and we will develop this country together.
I say to the young generation, the world is not charitable. If we make the mistake, which our forefathers did, of being bypassed by other societies in the march for development, and they end up in the Industrial Revolution, whilst we are doing customary things as rural people, we will face the threat which the Red Indians saw in America. We will face the threat of extermination with the Aborigines saw in Australia. Our generation in the 70s reversed the military defeat of the 19th century. We carved a page of the restoration of African military virility on the global stage. We need to keep that tradition of vigilance and to support it with the modernization of our societies. Because if we make another mistake, next time we'll not dodge the bullet, we'll face extinction. This is what I say. It is important to learn the history of the generation which fought for independence and the sacrifices they made, but not only to learn it, to say how do we continue to defend ourselves, because the world is not charitable. If you are weak, you will be vanquished. That's what I want to appeal to the young generation.
I just want to say a very big thank you to Uncle Chris and Mama Monica for you opening up your residence, your home, to us. In Africa, you are not invited to the house, you are invited to home.
Yes.
And we are so delighted for hosting us in your house. Thank you so much for opening up your life, your family, your marriage, and everything for the rest of the continent, particularly the youth of Zimbabwe. And our prayer is that a lot of young people are going to take clue from the things that you have shared with us. And together, we can make the African world. Thank you so much for watching. This is Channel 63. And if you have any feedback, please don't hesitate to let us know. We'll be glad to address it. Thank you. And we'll come back another time.
Thank you, Channel 63.
Thank you, Channel 63.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Dr. Daytumi.
Africa needs you.